Welcome to Beyond the Build, the podcast where we talk with agency leaders about the work behind the work, how teams evolve, how leaders navigate change, and what it really takes to build something that lasts. I'm Shawn Johnston. My guest today is Tyler Frans, founder and CEO of Sense Emotion, an AI consultancy working with mid to large organizations to help them actually adopt AI, not just talk about it. Tyler has spent his career at the intersection of technology, operations, and people, and he brings a clear-eyed view of what's happening right now, which organizations are moving, which are frozen, and what the difference actually comes down to. Tyler, welcome to the show. Before we get into it, can you tell people who you are and what Sense Emotion does?
Yeah, thanks, Shawn. Great to be here. So I've, like you said, I've spent my career kind of at the center of technology and business. How do we use technology to drive change in the way that organizations operate? And Sense Emotion, we're focused entirely right now around AI and how that's changing, just what organizations are able to do and what individuals are able to do. And so, we're working with organizations really to understand what's possible today that maybe hasn't been possible in the past, and how can we help organizations work through some of the barriers and challenges around it, navigating these new technologies and leveraging them to their full extent.
Yeah. So Sense Emotion has a pretty specific point of view, human-centered, AI-driven change. Like, what does that actually mean in practice day to day?
Yeah, I think at the heart of every organization is the people. It's the folks that do the work. It's the customers that we're serving through this work. And, these technologies are amazing, and they can enable individuals to do some pretty cool things. And so, for us, we think a lot about this question of what are you optimizing for? And the challenges we see in the industry right now is that, a lot of the big tech that's driving AI forward is really being driven towards this optimization towards financial benefit. We think that that's going to have some negative impacts. And so we're really focused on how can we equip individuals to be using these tools to be able to increase their capability. And we believe that the organizations that are looking to empower their team to focus on the folks that they're serving are going to outperform over the long term. And so that really drives kind of what we do and how we do it as well.
Yeah. In our agency here, there's a lot of and what I'm seeing in other places, a lot of existential dread, a lot of developers and operations people worried they're going to be replaced and be out of work. So, we take a very humans first approach. We always have. So right now we've left AI implementation in kind of an experimental phase. Like, how do people find it's creating benefits for their work? Like, what do we learn from that? Just allow a little bit of curiosity to be a part of what we're doing, just to sort of help diffuse some of this fear. I don't want to replace people. I just want to do our work more efficiently so we can focus on the stuff that's like creative and fun, the parts that we like to do. So yeah.
I think we run into fear a lot. And like you mentioned, kind of existential, dread of will AI replace me? And I do think that a lot of the narratives that are coming out of the open AIs, especially of the world, are kind of driving that fear from a marketing perspective. I look at it a little bit of a different way here. Our goal isn't to automate more. Our goal is to raise that level of expectation, raise the ceiling of what's possible. And, I think one of the amazing things that I'm seeing right now is just our ability to deliver just better results and new capabilities and solve new, old problems in new ways. Yeah. To a much higher level of fidelity. And so for me, I get excited about what this can do. I think there's a lot of opportunity for craftspeople as well to be leveraging these tools to do things that they may not have ever been capable of previously.
Yeah. I think some of the opportunities that I personally see for just running my own agency, there's operational reporting, HR things we just never have time to get to. And so there's some opportunities to be able to deliver a better workplace for people with easier access to information so we can spend less time trying to get answers. Mm-hmm. And that last one, people being able to do things they haven't before. Like our director of technology, Troy, we sent to a workshop, an all-day workshop on how to use Claude Code to produce prototypes.
Yeah.
And he's really taken to it like a fish to water. So he's produced a couple of plugins for projects. He's taking ideas that we've had and actually displaying it as a prototype to the
Yeah.
engineers to actually produce. So like
Hmm.
we couldn't do that sort of stuff before.
Hmm.
So like
Hmm.
I think that those are where the real opportunities are.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we're seeing a lot of that in our work as well. And I think what's kind of cool that we're seeing as well is that our way of interacting with clients is really shifting as well. Because we can get to, in some ways a higher level of fidelity a lot quicker, that enables us to test a lot more ideas than before.
Yeah.
And to actually get a higher level of fidelity of feedback
Yeah.
as well from our clients. And our clients seem to love it, because we used to come to them with such abstract, here's a blueprint. We want you to take this and envision what that looks like, or here's page tables, or here's
Yeah.
a site map, and ask them to really kind of envision what that looks like as a full site. Whereas now we can take some of those ideas, we can build them, a fair bit further pretty quickly,
Yeah.
and get that feedback to then incorporating and use that prototype to really strongly inform the end product.
Yeah. Yeah, I think where people are focusing on these types of activities, I think ultimately they're the ones that are going to drive value. For the ones that are just really focused on replacing people, which is kind of like the marketing through line for like
Yeah.
the open AIs of the world, where it's like do
Hmm.
more with fewer people. Like why not do more with the same amount of people?
Yeah.
Right? So, but like
Yeah.
that kind of underlying ROI, like you're going to save on overhead costs. Like that's for me, that's not a great way to look at it. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. For me, yeah, I love that. Like, how do we do more, better, faster? And I think as for us focused in BC here, there's a big kind of productivity gap in BC compared to what we see even down in the States, and not to hold them to a high bar here, but
Yeah.
or on a pedestal. But I think that there is an opportunity for us to be pushing further in this market, and increasing what we're delivering in the market. And I get excited about what sort of opportunities that enables.
Yeah. 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 So, I mean, you've been deep in this space since before it was a crowded market. Like what do you see now that you couldn't see a year ago?
Yeah. What do I see now that I couldn't see a year ago? I think I've been I wrote my first paper on AI back in 2006, and obviously that was a very different understanding of AI than we
Yep.
have today. I've been thinking about this space for a really long time. And, I continue to just be so amazed by, what these tools can enable. I've been surprised by actually just the adoption of these tools. Like for me, it was like the first day I tried ChatGPT, that first day, it was like, this is amazing. This is
Mhm.
gonna like change the world. And so I've been surprised at just the slow pickup and adoption of that. But I think especially over the last, I'd say since middle of November, when Opus 4.5 came out, there was this huge kind of step change in sort of the agentic abilities of Opus in particular, not exclusively, but in that model from Anthropic, and seeing, all these kind of individuals over the last 3 months that have built software or produced kind of new ways of working or documents, or using these AI tools in really kind of creative and novel ways. That's been just amazing to see that kind of next level of adoption and what it's enabling kind of across the board. And I have a few stories that I could share where I've seen some really cool things that people are creating and how they're using these tools. And so I think just that adoption and
Yeah.
how there's like almost these step curves. It's like the technologies kind of get to a certain capability level, and suddenly that enables a whole new range of possibilities.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember touching chat for the first time.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know what I'd use this for. Like, I just don't, well, like, I don't get it. So, but then like it just sort of it kept percolating. And then I tried it for something, and then I tried it for another thing. And then it just kind of layered to the point now where I'm building, custom Claude agents to do stuff. Like there's a skills
Yeah.
progression that comes.
Yeah. And
And
like skills and capabilities happening,
that's
like
right.
both the underlying capabilities of the model plus our ability to
Yeah.
leverage them, and also like the ideas of what's possible, right?
Yeah.
Or it kind of
Yeah. Like
expands.
I had to compile just a bunch of historic references just for some legal stuff, and just having Claude go find this information for me in my inbox. Cause it had to go all the way back to 2019. Like I did that in 5 minutes. That would have been like hours of fishing
Hmm.
around in my email,
Hmm.
frustratingly trying to find stuff. So,
Hmm. Yeah. And I'm curious for you, to what extent do you trust what Claude was able to find? I mean, legal is one of these areas where everybody's like, oh, AI is
Yeah.
going to
Well,
disrupt
and I guess
legal.
that's like how you guide it. Like I didn't want it to interpret it for me. I just wanted to find it.
Yeah.
So then I went and grabbed it myself from there. So yeah, and that that is a good point. Like you can't actually trust it. So the way you frame your
Hmm.
requests and how you double check that and validate that
Hmm.
is part of that learning curve. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. And I would say that that's something that's kind of evolving for me too, is the level and extent to which I do trust these models.
Yeah.
Obviously we tell all of our clients, like, you are responsible and accountable for anything that is output by these models. You're the driver, right?
Yeah.
And yet I think that what I can see is that the capabilities of these models increasing are reducing hallucination rates so substantially that that's really significantly
I
changing the
have
level
started to trust
of
it a
trust.
lot more. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Mm, mhm.
So you've described a pattern of organizations getting frozen in the face of AI. Like they know it's here, but they just can't move. Like, what does that actually look like from the inside when you walk into one of those organizations?
Yeah, it can look like many different things. Different organizations get frozen for different reasons. I think there's a pretty significant learning curve when folks are coming into these technologies, which can be a little surprising because on one hand it's just a chat. Ask it questions and it answers those questions.
Uh-huh.
On the other hand, these technologies work fundamentally different than any technology we've had in the past.
Yeah, it is very different. Yeah.
There's amazing things that these technologies can do, and at some points you're like, wow, this is a genius, and other times you're like, this is the dumbest thing
It's
I've
the
ever
dumbest
worked
thing
with,
I've ever used. Yeah.
and so that's really challenging. Ethan Mollick refers to that as the jagged frontier. And there's a group of academics at a Wharton and IT that came up with this concept, kind of identifying that it's really difficult to know what AI is going to be good at. And when you're within the frontier of what AI is capable of, you see these great positive impacts. But as soon as you get outside, bad things start happening. Your accuracy drops significantly. You waste more time trying to coerce this weird technology to solve your problems than you
Yeah.
could have solved that task faster. And so I think because of that, there's this gap, and people just don't know how to leverage these tools. They don't know what's possible. They're lacking some imagination, and so there's some learning and education that
Yeah.
needs to
The
happen there.
imagination. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there are a lot of places where these technologies just aren't right for. And I think that what I see is a lot of organizations treating AI as primarily a technology problem, where actually I see it as an organizational challenge. I see it as, how do we adopt this? How do we reimagine the way that we work and design around kind of the current capability of this technology, rather than trying to create a standalone single AI solution that solves all our problems. And so breaking that down, understanding, what are we trying to achieve? What's the core of the business, problem or opportunity that we're seeing? Where do we leverage AI? Where do we leverage other solutions? And so in that mix, I see a lot of leaders and organizations just getting stuck. It's changing so fast. I don't know where to start. What about this? What about this?
Hmm.
And almost just getting frozen of kind of too many options, and just a lack of fundamental understanding of how to
Yeah.
progress.
Yeah. Like anecdotally, from my own experience of trying to launch the SaaS product that we built, like initially it was like figuring out go to market fit and the right questions to ask. But once I was able to routinely get people to the point where they're like, yes, this solves my problem, and then not to be able to adopt, like I saw that 20, 30 times. Like I think what you're saying is right. There's an organizational maturity that doesn't exist more often than you think. Because like what we were doing is asking an agency to adopt a low code platform that fundamentally changes the way you deliver web work. Like we found that easy to adapt to, but we have a more decentralized and like everyone has a lot of agency on how they do things, and so that allowed us to adopt this. But like in more traditional rigid sort of top down cultures where everything has to be sort of directive, you're missing that operational flexibility to
Mhm.
actually adopt the technologies without like some sort of like overarching plan, which is overwhelming. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, part of the rationale behind even the name Sense and Motion came out of this framework called the Cynefin framework. It's a Welsh word, Cynefin, which
Okay.
just kind of looks at different ways of solving problems. And so they describe, simple, complicated, and chaotic problems and different ways of solving problems when they're in that space. And
Yeah.
I think that we're truly in a chaotic space. And so what the Cynefin framework suggests is that, we can't rely on kind of past knowledge and experience to know what to do next. What we need to do is we need to experiment. We need to see what works. We need to learn quickly. We actually need to prioritize learning in order to enable progress. And so, I think I love what you're talking about there, and having a decentralized way to enable experimentation, to enable learning, to prioritize
Yeah.
that, and to build trust across your team is really critical to enable the conditions to experiment effectively and to learn and share those learnings
Yeah.
openly.
Yeah. And that can't really exist in a culture where experimentation is discouraged, where there's not space for that, where mistakes and missteps are punished, whether explicitly or implicitly. Like that's
Hmm.
not an environment. So, like if
Hmm.
organizations that are winning at AI are the ones that are already had like high trust, high autonomy cultures, like what do you think that says about this being more of a leadership problem than a technology problem?
Yeah, I think, yeah, I would say that's absolutely true. And I think, leadership needs to look like different things at different times in this adoption
Hmm.
phase as well. And with any, new technology or new initiative, I think good leadership in this space is going to be able to both enable that experimentation and learning, and that should be an ongoing path. But also good leadership will recognize when, all right, we've learned what we needed to learn and now we need to progress. We need to put that plan in place. We need to solidify, here's where we're getting the value. Here's where we're going to drive this forward to enable focus and rigor and intentionality around how we adopt these. And I think good leadership is paying attention to what does the organization need? What do my people need to be able to succeed in this moment, and recognizing that that's going to look different at different points along the journey.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like my understanding personally of leadership over the years has evolved a lot. And like I think what you're saying is something that I really align with. Like leadership's about um like stewardship, like being a part of
Mm-hmm.
the environment with everybody else. Like you're
Mm-hmm.
not, it's less about control and way
Mm-hmm.
more about shaping the conditions that good work emerges from.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, if you're not already like in the leadership style like that, if a company doesn't operate that way, like I don't think there's a way to successfully implement something like AI from the outside top down. Like this is not something you can mandate. Like
Mm-hmm.
curiosity isn't something that you can sort of set KPIs around.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's a conversation that we are having with some of the more traditional organizations that we're working with as well. And a word that I've used a lot lately is agility. Just how do we increase organizational agility? And I
Yeah.
hear these leaders saying like, "Man, it's changing so fast. Like I'm not sure we can keep up with the pace of change. Like we need to slow down." And that makes sense. Like you may need to slow down in order to speed. But
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
my encouragement to those organizations is you need to increase both your organizational agility and organizational resilience to be able to move effectively and navigate some pretty uncharted waters that we're in right now, not just around technology, but the world is just a bit of a chaotic space right now across so many different spaces. So,
Yeah. So one thing that we talked about was about like a knowledge loss problem. And,
hmm,
particularly when you're adopting AI systems, particularly for internal usage, like not having data for it to learn from is a real problem. Like I think in my experimentations with AI, I've realized that when it has very little to work on, it fills in its own gaps. And that comes out as like not what I'm looking for. But the
hmm,
more that I can give it and the less it has to do that, then it's just working with stuff that's already us or already me. And so like you work with some like larger organizations, there's a lot of like boomer leadership where a lot of the expertise sort of lives. Like how hard is like maybe talk about that a little bit. Like we've with these type of organizations where everything's sort of locked inside of older executives' brains and not really documented, like that's also got to be a big hurdle.
yeah, it's a huge problem. It's also not a new problem.
Yeah.
I think in some ways, because yeah, this problem of knowledge management and how do we leverage kind of that knowledge is a question that's come up a lot lately. And I think that it's not like, wow, all of a sudden this is a new thing that we're dealing with. I think it's that people are sensing that there's a new way that we can solve this problem, or at least aspects of this
Yeah.
problem. First and foremost, I think technology and AI is not going to fundamentally solve all aspects of this problem. And good organizational structure and building mentorship into organizations still super important for juniors and more entry level staff to understand what's important, and that time with those individuals I think is really critical.
Hmm.
There are, I think, some pretty cool new ways of solving some of these problems that are emerging on our side. Like most people, we're recording all of our meetings now. We're actually right now hooking that up into a full loop system where all of our transcripts are getting loaded into a central place that we actually have Claude and some asynchronous agents that are working on those. So when a new transcript comes in, it catches that and starts acting on some of the action items that have been identified through that, just to move what it can. And one of the things that I'm excited about that is how that can help us capture some of the common trends and common like conversations that we're having, where we almost we end up having some of the same conversations over and over again.
Hmm.
We were with one of our clients recently. They're having challenges with their sales pipeline right now. And while they have a tremendous amount of data, they're still struggling to answer this question of like, why are we losing in this particular market? And there's rich conversations happening between the sales manager and the sales reps that are actually exposing a ton of that data. But then our expectation of those sales folks is that they will go and take that rich data and go enter it into a CRM and capture all these data. And the organization put together whatever it is, 20, 30 data points that they want these individuals to fill out.
Hmm.
While actually during the course of the conversation with their manager, they actually identified all the information. The information's there. It was actually discussed in that conversation, but we've never been able to work with unstructured data in the same way that we can right now. And so I think first and foremost is just how do we capture that knowledge, and then how do we structure it? How do we make sense of it across the organization? And then how do we expose it? How do we create kind of in stream or in context exposure to, all right, based on past scenarios like this, here's the steps that you should take. And so we're actually doing that with another client right now. We're working with a nonprofit that, a bit of a different environment, but do a lot of case management work.
Right.
These employees are deeply inspired by the clients that they're working with and want to give them all of their attention. And so when they're sitting with their clients that they're looking to support, they give them all their attention. Well,
Yeah.
they also need to be reporting what they discussed. They need to be capturing a lot of information. And so it kind of splits their focus. And so the admin work ends up happening at the end of the day or in the evening or on weekends, and then not getting captured as effectively. And so we're actually building a tool for this nonprofit right now, where actually the data entry is happening live on the call in a custom built system that we've put in place for
Yeah.
them. That is not it also doesn't just work in English. It also works in any language that we can use an audio model to be able to capture that language. And so, increasingly what I want to see is that the work is a conversation. It's the ideas, it's
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
back and forth, and
Yeah.
that we have systems in place that can enable us to action that and keep better alignment, share information more readily. And in that way, I think we can increase the speed of how we operate pretty significantly, because everybody's, pushing in the same direction.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's actually really a key point. And you preempted my question about this knowledge hub. So I'm glad we're talking about it. The one thing that we struggle with often in our agency is like we've got people having direct client conversations who need to be able to record and document takeaways and then make sure that goes to other people. And we spend a lot of time trying to do that. And because there's always a lack of time, details get missed. And then those issues sort of pop up later in the process. So
Mhm.
like I know from my own experience, like using Fathom, for example, on discovery calls for the
Mhm.
sales process, again, because of my neurodiversity, trying to take notes that I'm going to understand later while engaging with somebody was
Mhm.
significantly difficult. And so being able to just focus on the conversation, because that's the work, not documenting it.
Mhm.
That's admin. Like, I think that's one of like the hugest opportunities here. If people could
Mhm.
just like think about this, like the admin's just busy work. It's not the craft. The
Yeah.
conversations we have, the things we experiment with,
Mhm.
the questions we
Mhm.
ask, the
Mhm.
curiosity,
Mhm.
that's the work.
Mhm.
Um, and if you can spend more of your time doing that,
Mhm.
and have systems that actually just make sure that things don't get lost, that things get collated and documented, and like
Mhm.
specific tones or issues or things get flagged for certain people at certain times, and we can just focus on the work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I love that.
So there's a version of all of this capturing the knowledge, and this is something that we bump into a little bit just from my own experience. Is like it can feel a little bit like surveillance. Like
Mhm.
how do you build a system in a way where people actually sort of trust rather than feeling they're being monitored?
Yeah, that's it's tricky. We're struggling with that a little bit, and I mean, we're very young. You know, Sense Emotion's been around for 2 years, and we're building in this AI world from the ground up. I think back to my days running a large agency in the past, and
Yeah.
just how much time and effort it takes to uh, change directions. And so basically, what I will say is that I think this is very different when you're building from the ground up, and when you need to create change in
Yeah.
an organization and a culture that already exists. So maybe I'll start with what we're doing from the ground up here,
Sure.
is that we've kind of just built that into the way that the organization operates. We have established a very high trust culture. We actually all share a single Claude instance, not to save money, but because we're all experimenting with AI. Like, that's the core thing. And so we actually want to be able to see exactly how other people are using
That's interesting. Yeah.
Claude effectively. And so
Yeah.
we've kind of just built this sort of transparency and very, very high trust environment into the way that we operate, because we believe that it's going to significantly increase our speed. The line that always comes to mind for me on this is, progress at the speed of trust. And so trust is at the heart of this.
Yeah.
And so, we're kind of hiring and we're setting expectations with folks that are joining the organization that, look, this is a way that we work. And we do, here's the reasons, and here's why we think that that's important for us. And also, here's our commitments in terms of, how we'll treat this data, and how we'll respect it, and expectations as well that, look, if don't use tools for personal conversations, because they are going to be recorded. And so
Yeah.
just setting those clear kind of boundaries and expectations. I think what's challenging is that when you're in an environment that already exists, anytime we change something, there's this very natural question of, what's behind it? What are you trying to do?
Yeah.
Why are you
Yeah.
trying,
What's
and
the
that's where I think
objective? Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's where that surveillance question, or, concern would typically come in.
Yeah.
And
Like
so,
I've noticed, like with us, like we now record, it's been going on for like about a year now, but we record
mhm,
every single client conversation. And we do that because we all want that level of documentation so that we have that knowledge to share with one another. So like that's an aligned set of needs that's based in trust. We're doing
yeah.
this somewhat to protect ourselves, but also so that we have this information accessible to everyone else. So, same thing with like, yeah, there's a discussion right now about like we implemented the EOS system last year. We're now at like regular L10s with different groups, but like, should we record those? Should that be information that we're able to mine and assess company problems, like things that we need to fix? Like, are we hitting our goals? Like, is there a way to, and if that's the idea,
Mhm.
this is why we're doing that. And like, you know, don't have personal conversations in an LT. That's the discussion that we're having right now.
Yeah.
But you're right. Yeah. If the intent has to be clear, the value has to be obvious,
Mhm.
and everyone has to have to be sort of bought into, yes, this is going to help me and us as a team.
Yeah, you've got to live it out over time, right? That requires a lot of trust,
Hmm.
and there is risk associated, and so the value needs to be clear
Yeah.
to your people. And then I think too, as we continue to introduce new ways of working, that's going to inform, evolving norms. I think that recording your L10s and distributing the conversation notes there's probably a ton of value in that for you and for the team. But also, I think there's, likely a need to be at the end of the meeting creating space for kind of an off-camera moment as well, because, sometimes we need that space of just what happens in the room. And we are, human, and we need that ability to, maybe be messy at
Yeah.
times. And so creating space. And so I don't have any answers on this. We're really figuring this out as we go as
Yeah.
well. But for us, I think, yeah, we're just seeing sort of the speed and what that can enable, that we're trying
Yeah.
to see, okay,
I
how do we enable that?
yeah, I think anyone walking around saying they have answers when it comes to AI are full of it.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Yeah.
just too new, changing too
Yeah.
fast. We're all just playing.
Yeah. Exactly.
So, I mean, you and I both landed on this idea independently that the thing that AI can't really replace is knowing what good output looks like.
Mm.
Like, what does that actually mean in context to what your team's doing day to day?
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, it's a tricky one because, in some ways, AI is actually getting far better at understanding what some good outputs look like. But at the end of the day, the thing I think about is just, what are we optimizing for, and just the
Yeah,
expertise of craftspeople, of trained experts to know what matters most, and to pick up on the subtleties, to ask the right questions, and to guide towards what does good look like, and
yeah,
how will we know if we're there. And I think that's maybe one of the biggest challenges with AI, and certainly today, is that one, it's kind of this, I don't know, the average output. It's all right, here's all this data that it's been trained on, and then the outputs that it creates is kind of the average
yeah,
of that. And so there's a lot of mediocrity that can drive. And so, one of the things that we talk about a lot is, especially when we're producing like strategy documents, Claude will happily give us 70-page documents that are full of fluff and whatnot. And increasingly, it's what we want to be doing is, how do we distill the richness of the information into the smallest
yeah,
space possible?
yeah.
Or in design, how do we create a great, beautiful, elegant solution?
Mhm.
So yeah, it's, again, no answers on this, but I think it's about, what are we trying to solve for, and then how are we able to recognize when we're headed in the right direction, and that sort of constant refinement towards good results.
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, like we talked about, Sense of Motion being younger, it's 2 years old. You've been around a lot longer than that, obviously. So, you built it from scratch in the middle of what, might be the fastest moving technology shift any of us has ever seen. Like, what has that done with what has that done to how you lead?
Yeah, I pause because I think that that's something that I'm constantly thinking about right now. I grew up in the agency space, spent 15 years in a single organization where I went from a junior developer to COO and a
Yeah.
partner, and we grew that to 100 people. I've never been in this early stage of an agency, and it's really hard.
Yeah.
And so, I'm learning a lot right now. And so, I would say I'm probably learning a lot more about leadership from that experience than I am from AI specifically.
Uh-huh.
I'm learning from the folks around me, and just how incredibly important that is in building an organization, is just surrounding yourself with people that challenge you and push you further than you'd be able to get to
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
And I would say as well that, almost especially in these times of significant change, old truths that we need to lean on. What does great leadership look like? Well, it looks like what we talked about before, creating an environment where people can learn, can grow, can do their best work. It's about creating clarity and vision, and inspiring, and helping people just keep moving towards that common objective. Like, these are things that, like, AI doesn't replace. And so I think it's almost like, especially in these moments of of chaos, just that grounding in how do you support the folks around you that are trusting you, and then also on top of that, I think is just how do you keep this lens of where are we going? How do we increase agility? How do we recognize that the goal is not to stay the same, but actually to embrace change,
Yeah.
to enable that as a core way of how we operate,
Yeah.
and use that to yeah, increase the resilience of the organization overall to weather whatever comes.
Right. Yeah. I mean, something that I've thought about a lot and that we've talked a lot about is that trust can only emerge from stability. It's impossible to build trust in a chaotic environment. So, but the one thing that I sort of talk about a lot internally is like stability is not stasis. So how can we intentionally change, intentionally
Mm,
plan and adopt in a
mm,
way that allows for stability, which I think really comes from like clarity, thoughtful planning, discussion,
mhm,
taking the time
mhm,
to do that has been hard for me. So like one of the things that I do very well is recognize patterns and then see a solution from different things. I call it I say this all the time. I skip to the end and I want to just implement that end thing. Now, I've had the whole discussion because that's just how my brain works. But nobody else has benefited from that discussion. So
mhm,
learning how to go through the steps, because the fact is that, well, I'm actually pretty good at predicting that outcome. I'm not perfect at it. I do make mistakes, and I do get it wrong. So also having a little bit of humility to, make myself go through that steps, it makes for better decisions and
mhm,
less reactivity. And I think that kind of reactivity, well, I'm comfortable with it. Not everybody else is. And so
mhm.
that creates that instability and that's what impacts trust. So like that's what I've learned about leadership over the last bunch of years and just accepting that as good as I am at some things, I'm bad at other things and I sometimes get in my own way and it's better to accept help rather than try to do everything on your own.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. Actually, yeah, I really love what you're saying there, and just like what a rich moment for learning. I think one of the cool things, we've been talking about sort of the stability, and for me, just having the support, kind of systems and structures around me. I think especially over this last couple of years, just like my wife and family, and just that. Yeah, like my wife, I think about stability and what she's kind of creating for me to be able to go out and to, start a new business in a really chaotic space where it's like
Yeah.
AI 2 years ago is like, you're doing what?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think about like how do we create that in our organizations? This like stability and what that can drive of confidence in experimentation
Yeah. Yeah.
and seeing where that can take us and changing that fear into excitement and confidence that hey, if I try these things out, like I don't know if I'm going to succeed, but I know that I'm going to learn, and I know learning is going to take me to new possibilities
Yeah.
and new, like a next level of expectations
Yeah.
of what I'm capable of and what I can do.
Yeah. Yeah, the like trust allows for belonging and that's what turns I into us. Like that's how we
Mhm,
can and
mhm,
until I becomes us, it's very hard to collaborate in meaningful ways and when
mhm,
experimentation and curiosity and learning is part of what we're doing, it's most effective to do that with others. And, us as leaders, particularly leading in this time in these ways, like you have to be in there. Like you're part of the us, right? It's not them and
mhm,
me, right?
mhm.
It's us. So
Yeah.
we have a job to play. I often like in all my years of like stuff that I've done, the closest approximation that I've experienced to how I've found leadership within a changing space like this to be effective was like my time as a chairperson of a community board, or like I wasn't the boss. My job was just to facilitate discussion and create consensus. Like that feels a lot like what I'm doing. They're not my decisions. I'm helping to bring clarity to the problem and then help us resolve to a solution and then see how it goes and then revisit that. So, a leader as facilitator, someone's got to decide, obviously. So you have to be a bit of a decider. But yeah, like not feeling like I have to have the answers and create the direction. Like it doesn't work very well that way. And so facilitating discussion and creating
Yeah.
decisions and then measuring how that's worked and then facilitating more discussions, that's been more
Hmm.
effective.
Yeah. Love that.
Yeah. So if you could sit down with a leader who's been watching AI from the sidelines, like not dismissing it, just waiting to see how it settles, like what would you tell them?
Like honestly, I wouldn't want to tell them anything. I'd want to show them. I'd want to ask. I you know I it's a really tough space to like fully get your head around what's possible, and seeing and experiencing just goes so much further. So I think, yeah, what is it? Focus on what are the challenges you're trying to solve? Start there. What are the opportunities? What are you excited about? What are you nervous about?
Hmm.
What's gonna get you energized? And then just start playing with
Just
these
start.
tools.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
get moving. Who on your team is excited about this? Where are you seeing momentum? 80+% of your staff, if not higher, are using these tools regularly.
Hmm.
Who is excited about this? How can you enable them? How can you create some space for experimentation, and learning, and, all the things that we've been talking about here. But just, it's just, yeah, I love that. Just start
Yeah.
and learn and see that as a mission right now.
Yeah. Like what I've told people is like, just use it. Try
Hmm.
it for yourself. Find
Hmm.
things that it can do for you, even if it's just in your personal life. Get it to make a shopping list for you, like just
Yeah.
something, right?
Yeah.
Like honestly, that's where I started using it the most was just in my personal life with
Mhm,
stuff. Just
mhm,
I had a thought and I would play with it, and then that just became
mhm,
like more and more. And so
mhm.
having your own use cases for its
Yeah.
effectiveness, having
Mhm.
experiences where it was like super dumb and it was not helpful at all, like
Yeah.
that helps you understand where the lines are and where to color in
Mhm.
them.
Yeah.
And then same thing, like I just have found a lot of leaders are scared to hear from their teams because they don't want to hear bad stuff. But like that's how you grow. Like
Mm.
I always say, like a smooth sea never made a skilled sailor. Like you have to hear the bad stuff or you can't grow. Like why are certain team members resistant? What are they scared of? What do they not like?
Yeah.
What's the
Yeah.
feedback? Like, and
Yeah.
if you can't get that from them directly, work with some anonymous tools, pulse surveys, like that sort of
Mhm,
stuff. Like,
mhm.
like listen to what people want. And for the folks on the team that are like experimenting with it, how's it working? Like share that knowledge. Like this
Mhm,
is it's a little bit of an adventure. There's no secret sauce here.
mhm,
There's no game plan. There's no
mhm,
implementation schematic. Like
mhm, mhm,
it's where does it create value and how
mhm.
can we start stitching some of this together?
Yeah. 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 I love that. And what I do like about that personal project is, yeah, just finding something that you're excited and passionate about, actually like chasing down fully, like that you're going to actually push through some of the walls and the barriers that you're going to hit. That's where the learning happens. And I think that, having leaders that understand what that looks like, and then enabling teams to be pushing through that as
Yeah.
well. Like you gotta push through some of those walls to capture the real learning.
Yeah.
And then, I think that just opens up possibilities, and
Yeah.
it's like, all right, cool. What's next? Like where
That's
where
right.
else can I apply this?
Start small, right?
Yeah.
Every journey starts with
Get
a
a win.
single step. Like just start with something small and build some confidence with it, get some buy-in and just see where it leads you.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's a wrap on this episode of Beyond the Build. Thanks to Tyler Frans from Sense of Motion for one of the most grounded takes on AI in organizations I've had in a long time, and for being willing to say what a lot of people in this space won't, that the technology isn't really the heart. Tyler, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So everybody, thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.